Alright, recording again to continue in the circular detail and music. There, and nope, just general gore. Yep, is it Major Viscera now? Admiral Buckets. Oh yeah, I think that might be what in the previous part I was talking about the Metro Exodus Enhanced Edition coming. That announcement. And I've got to mention one thing that I saw. The developers for games was asked about the current state of ray tracing hardware, essentially. And it wasn't... I mean, true, the implementation is very similar, at least between the Xbox Series X and S and PlayStation 5 and AMD's RDNA 2 GPUs. But it was still interesting how basically the way it sounded was actually something that makes perfect sense to me from having read the patent that AMD is likely the basis for AMD's ray tracing solution. That basically, yeah, the NVIDIA RTX 3080, I think is what may have been named. I don't remember, but for performance, it's in a different league. But for flexibility, the AMD solution is, at least the implication was it is better. It is a much more flexible system. Meaning that it could be applied in novel ways. Which makes sense, because if you go back, and I know I've talked about this before, plenty of times. But if you do find the patent for the AMD ray tracing solution, it talks about it being a hybrid hardware-software solution in that it can be controlled by shaders. Whereas the NVIDIA solution, because it's sort of complete, like a separate block on the GPU, it is not as controllable. Now, unfortunately, that does mean then that it might be quite some time before you really see that other design taking advantage of, the AMD design taking advantage. Just, it can take a while to figure out, how best, what new applications you can have for something. But it will be interesting to see if that comes and what it is. But it is also true, and from my perspective, not that long ago, I did some recording where I was talking about how I'm ray tracing of all the new technologies, the new graphics technologies. It's like the one that interests me the most. It's like, it's, just being applied as like a horizontal image quality improvement, or image accuracy improvement, depending on what you look at it. It's like, that's, okay. Whereas you give me something like variable rate shading, it's like, ooh, this has, potential for significantly improved performance. I've seen some people talk about using it to create motion blur effects. I mean, it's like that there's great potential there for many things. Ray tracing is only being used for graphics right now, so why do I care? And I do kind of wonder one thing, though. Could you, with ray tracing, do a sort of hybrid approach? And what I mean by that is, instead of like explicitly using the rays for figuring out reflection, but like just figuring, using the ray to figure out that, oh, this surface should be reflecting that up there, and then it just uses standard rasterization. So it's like rays just to identify what the reflection is of in general, and then and potentially also then if the reflection is needed, and then use rasterization so you still have the speed. I have no idea if that would be feasible, but it could be interesting to see if that's something that could be done. But yeah, it's like Vapor HA is much more interesting. The mesh shading stuff is interesting. Which, the simplest way I think to put it is, instead of having the graphics pipeline be the rigid, sequential pipeline that it is, you basically treat all of those graphical shaders, like vertex shaders and such, as compute shaders. So it's all compute tasks, which they already are. I mean, it's like abstractly they all are. But you do that, and then you can also break apart the pipeline. You don't need to follow that pipeline so strictly. It's like there's some definitely interesting things that you can achieve with that. Improved performance is just one example, because you can like do culling at an earlier stage, so you don't need to. I don't think that. Yeah, there's nothing on there. Oh good, another one of the arc welder. I never started the timer, damn. But yeah, it's like, this is a very interesting thing. I mean, it's like doing the culling earlier, so you can improve performance, potentially coming up with new novel effects that, because of the mesh design, so you can just identify certain things earlier, and the greater performance, like, oh, now we suddenly have so much more available to us. Yeah, I mean, that stuff interests me far more, because it's like, this is something that could actually be game-changing for what is possible. Whereas ray tracing is technically ray tracing predates rasterization. It's just always been so performance intensive that we haven't used it. Whereas we've never had something like mesh shaders, prior to 6 years? 6 years ago? Would that be right? Because the primitive shaders that AMD had developed for Vega, would that be 6 years? I don't remember how long ago that would be now. But those are, essentially a precursor to mesh shading. Like the concept there is in the next generation geometry pipeline, the NGG pipeline. That AMD work is basically what the mesh shader stuff is. Making it more flexible and doing things on the primitives, doing things earlier rather than later. It's just, oh, the NVIDIA's doing it now? Okay, well now it matters, kind of thing. Which is sad, but is the case. Yeah, that stuff interests me. And recently, for me, UL released a new feature test for 3D Mark that will let you see the impact of the mesh shader, and you would see like frame rate go from around 30 in the test, which, to be clear, the test is designed only to show off the feature, so the results are exaggerated. Compared to a real game, you're not going to find a real game where, well, okay, I shouldn't say that as an absolute. You may find a real game that would have such an impact, would be so impacted by mesh shaders, but that would not be my expectation. That's how I should put that. But you were seeing like frame rate for like the thing I saw was for the RX 6900 XT, so $1,000 GPU without the mesh shading, being applied for culling purposes, which is actually an amplification shader, which is part of the larger mesh shader concept, mesh shading concept, but yes, technically it is different from the mesh shaders, which are also something within the concept, an actual technical thing. By having that culling being done, the frame rates would go to like 1300. So from 30, oh wait, no, sorry, it was 1300% increase. I mean, that's insane. Now, true, that's with a very powerful GPU. So maybe it wouldn't be quite as extreme for a low-end GPU. Like it's not out, well, at the time I'm saying this, it's not out or announced, but maybe by the time this video goes live, it will be either out or announced. Like the RX 6700 series. Like, maybe it wouldn't be so big a difference there, but I mean, the 1300% increase, but even say a 500% increase, well, 650% increase, half that. That's still a huge increase that could benefit a lot of people. I mean, when I was first seeing, I talked in the last part about how Series M4, I managed to, by enabling variable rate shading, a different technology, to suddenly have Series M4 running with super sampling at 4x on an RTX 2060. That's very impressive to me. Much more impressive than what is achievable with DLSS, because yeah, true, the RTX 2060 is capable of that, but not everything is capable of DLSS. And it's also, a very controlled technology from NVIDIA. So VOS, which is just part of DirectX 12, it's a standard that anyone can use. It's also part of Vulkan, so anyone can use it. Mesh shaders, so it's the same kind of deal. It's in DirectX 12, it's also in Vulkan. It's actually also in OpenGL, I saw, which is like, really? Okay. OpenGL is in such a weird place. And it's always interesting to see people talk about how, AMD needs to get the act together on the OpenGL performance on Windows. It's like, yeah, it would be nice if it were better, especially because, it's so much better on Linux. But it's also not that much use. Yes, there are still some applications that use it, and some old applications that use it. Wolfenstein New Order would be one example. Rage, which at some point I do want to play through. I do have it, but I have not played through it yet. It's like, yeah, those use OpenGL, so it would be nice. Minecraft uses OpenGL, but that's also that's Java OpenGL. That's like a whole nother thing. But it's like, OpenGL is, no one's really developing in it anymore. And there's also weird stuff too. Weird history too. Like, one thing that I saw explained was that, like, how, there is actually no official, there is no hardware that supports, I think it's version 4.5? Like, that's actually not real. Yes, the NVIDIA GPUs will report as supporting it, but it's actually not true. What NVIDIA did, because they have the money and the number of developers, they just made their own version of OpenGL 4.5. And that's what's actually being run on their GPU. Whereas AMD didn't do that, so its top support is 4. I think it's 4.3. Maybe it is 4.4. But it's like, yeah, that's like actual OpenGL though. It's not, some variant that was made just because, I mean, it's in bad shape, OpenGL 4.5. That was actually an interesting article that I saw. I don't remember when. It's been a while. But it was basically, it was quite interesting. It was basically OpenGL, for a time, was actually, it had the potential to beat DirectX. Like, it had more advanced technologies in it. There were ways that it was better. But the people making decisions for it kind of squandered that. They like just had conflicting ideas, or they weren't thinking about how to. I don't know exactly how it went, but it was basically poor decisions were made, even though there were ways that should have been able to allow OpenGL to achieve dominance, but it basically, those weren't the decisions made, so DirectX was able to catch up and then surpass it. But hey, now we got Vulkan, and Vulkan's... Unfortunately, I can't use it. I tried. I did download the latest version of DXVK, stuck it in the folder, I did all that stuff right, and it didn't. The game wouldn't even receive me. So apparently, it does not like... BCD does not like the DXVK. It's okay, I mean, yeah. It happens. And it runs alright, so maybe we'd get rid of the stutter. It is also true that I only put in 2 of the DLLs. Maybe if I put in all of them it would work. I don't know. But it was such a pain to get it to turn off. Yeah. Getting to the water. Yeah, I don't want to experiment with it again because I don't trust that it will shut down properly when it fails, if it fails. Let me just, so I talked about ray tracing, lightly, mesh shaders, VOS. The other big thing for DirectX 12 Ultimate, which is only a marketing name, is, sorry, it's all it is, it's marketing. Is it DirectX 12.1 that would technically be the actual, name for what it is? Well, 12.1 includes all the DirectX Ultimate stuff and some other things, but these are, the 4 main technologies that Microsoft wanted to focus on. Those 3 that I mentioned, as well as sampler feedback, which is certainly an interesting technology. It's basically the GPU and also the drivers can be aware of what texture is being sampled. Or rather, what textures are being sampled where, so that you can more efficiently stream textures in and out. It's definitely a neat idea. It will be interesting to see what comes of that. But yeah, it is one thing that is quite amusing, that there are many technologies that are present now or coming out soon, or would be applied soon, I should say, not coming out soon, that would basically mean that, yeah, you don't, what are you talking about? Why do you think you need 16 gig of VRAM to do this, then the other thing? Like at 4K, it's like, nah, we've got things so well figured out. You can do it with, 4 gig. I mean, I'm making that number up, but it's like, it does feel like between different technologies, that's that may be entirely possible. That you won't need these massive amounts of VRAM. But VRAM is also one of those things that it's very easy to market. I just, kind of want, people to think about that we may enter into the situation where GPUs do not need 16 gig of VRAM, but you will not be able to sell a GPU with less. Because even though it would save you money, even though it would cost less, you're not going to be able to convince people that it's unnecessary. Now, of course, to be fair, it's not unnecessary. It would not be unnecessary because you can always just play an old title that can't take advantage of the technology that would make it so you don't need it. But it is still something that is true, and just kind of interesting that we have technologies that make that less of a limitation than it used to be. And yet, I think a lot of people neglect to think about that, neglect to consider that. I'm not reading that. I will do. But it's just, I do feel like I need to start taking care of things. Hey, Moonstorm, with your sequel, make this easier to figure out when it's done. Because that is so annoying that the effect is so large, it's hard to see when you've actually successfully gotten rid of it. Gotten rid of whatever it is you're aiming. You know, just like, welding goggles is something you can use. So that it's not so bright. Or adaptive goggles. So that you can see through all this. And I just say adaptive so that it's not like you put them on and take them on and off. They can just always be on and just activate and take a part of the screen if it's necessary. Come on. There we go. It hurt me. Nope. I see my there. Oh, the thing's right here? For some reason I thought I saw that in a different room. I don't need anything from it right now. I can leave the medkits and stuff for later. I should look at it though, see what all it offers. Shit. this may have one more. But it could be more. Lovely. I will just like look up instead of actually trying to find it. It is entirely possible someone slips a paper that I already burned. Actually leave that there. Oh, that's right. Smalls. I want to stick smalls. There. Huh. Again, you did bring another set of buckets. Especially if I do get access. kind of neat in a sequel for this. The ability to intentionally start fires. You know, like to have it go through and just burn all the small stuff. That maybe since I was already high enough to grab it, I'd be high enough. Probably not. But we got by. How does that actually get installed? There we go. That was awesome. I would not say that you need to be able to have, like, the arc welder be something that's just part of your hotbar, basically. It's fine. I just think that, like, let people set it down. Don't make it always you have to, you know, gets thrown whenever you don't want it. Although, if you wanted to introduce two kinds of arc welders, like one that is handheld and so is in the hotbar for dealing with these, but something else for the like larger footprint, I'd be good with that. that may have one. If not, it is, well, it cannot be more than one. The point at, you know. Good. I need more. Yep, got plenty more. There's there. I'm gonna go this way. Only have 9 minutes left. And I think I may actually stop so I can take a little bit of break after this one.
Butch Pablo.
Something of a curious name. I know most of these are manually generated. It's also, I don't typically associate Pablo with being a Latin. Oh, didn't even notice that. Yuri Smith. that is also curious. I think I actually managed to clear the room. Neat. Although there might still be smalls around, but it's like I don't see any more bullet holes. Yay. Check in here. It can be easier to just, you know, vaporize some stuff than to, you know, carry it back. Ah, there's one. Yep. How this grab mechanic actually works. Something else that they might, you know, might be beneficial would be gaze tracking integration, so that it's a grab at gaze. Which is the thing that plenty of other games do have. At least I don't have to worry about it spilling anymore. A magnet. Even though brass is not magnetic, it's great. No, it's not. Or if it is, it's not strong. But I don't. What with the collision volume? Sweet. Okay, so I'm gonna let this video go a little bit longer. There. I want to clean this up. Now, just, you know. You know what just occurred to me? Something that, I mean, One of the things I will say about how, yeah, I don't care about ray tracing is we don't have good physics for water. And yet, I mean, some games are better than others. And we definitely don't have good physics for fire yet. Look at that. No, that doesn't. I wonder if mesh shaders could be used to help with... I mean, if nothing else, might they allow for more complex effects? That then, in turn, allow for better things like fire, so it doesn't just look like an animation, a 2D animation that's just unreal. Okay. That is, that's just the painted line for the box area. Is this box itself? No, that's barrel, so all that stuff's in it. This is not an actual area. I just want to check them. This... Great, so... Let me... Put this here. That helped me remember. Just spotted that is also a thing I need to worry about. There are bullet holes there. Alright, there. And with that, I think I will save and stop so that, you know, like I said, I just feel like taking a break. There. But, yeah, I would come back to this Alright. So, I shall see you next time. About 9 minutes over. Alright. Yeah, see you next time.